Hey, Luba.
Hello, do you hear me?
I do. Mhm.
Okay, good. I had some problems with Zoom functioning, but not today.
That doesn't, no problems from my end. Sounds like you're good.
Okay, good.
Hey, Lynn.
Hi guys,
Hi, Len.
it's Luba.
Yeah.
You got your computer fixed.
Actually, my friend who is computer engineer, she checked. There was nothing wrong with my computer. There was a problem with Zoom, and she suspected that because of the updates, the computer does automatically, something was messed up, and that's why I didn't have functioning Zoom.
So did she uninstall and reinstall?
I did it. I did it myself with her supervision. Of course, because I shared my computer with her, and she checked my computer, and she said, "You know what? I'll give you the link. Uninstall the previous, install this. We'll see how it works."
Yeah. And
Yeah.
look, it's working great. So, yay.
Sharp technology. I'm gonna go turn on another light. It's a little dark in here.
Okay.
Hey, Tom.
Hi.
Hi, Tom.
Hello, hello. Are you in Spokane, Betsy, or are you in other
No.
parts of the country?
I'm in New York.
You are in other parts of the country.
New York
God.
City.
It
It's
must
down bad.
it must be past your bedtime.
No, it's only 7. Remember, last time I campaigned to not really New York, but just being on Central Time, which I will be this winter. Campaigned somewhat selfishly to move our meeting time earlier. So it's just 7. It's all right.
Oh, all
It's
right.
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a little better than starting at 9 p.m. for
That
you.
was hard.
That's
Last winter and the winter before that was quite hard. I remember laying in the bed trying to stay okay, or the phone on my chest and listening to the board. I'm like, oh, I'm so sleepy.
That's
Yeah.
awful.
Oh,
What's in
good.
New York?
What's in New York? Con Edison, the electric and gas utility. I'm here working with them.
Oh,
They're a client of ours. Nice folks.
good.
So are you there for
A week.
days or weeks or months or what?
Just a week. Just a
Oh.
week. At most all of my work travel, Tom, very rarely stretches over a weekend. Very It's
Oh.
just 1 week. Flying on Monday, leave on Thursday, something like that. Yep.
Wow. That's big wig stuff. Are you in a hotel?
Yes. Yes. Hilton Garden Inn on West 35th Street. It's not too far from Times Square, which is not an awesome part of Manhattan to hang out in. It's busy. There's lots of things happening here, but it's also busy and there's lots of things happening here, so it's not real quiet.
Well, hopefully you get to do something fun while you're there.
Oh, mostly eat,
Good.
but we're out to eat. We're eating tourists, but yeah.
Good.
After we finish, hey Doug, can't hear you. You're on mute. Continue talking. After I finish this week of work, I'm going to head up to Oswego, New York, and visit my dad's, where he was born and raised. So before coming home, since I'm all the way over here, little teeny road trip. So that's fun. That's a fun thing.
Do you have relatives that you can go visit there, or are you going to be visiting cemeteries?
I don't know any relatives there anymore, Tom. I have not in touch with them. That would have been a good idea, but to kind of try to figure out who that was, see if there's anybody and go do that. But I'm just gonna check out the town, look at Dad's house, look at great grandpa's house, stuff like that. Maybe something will happen. Maybe I'll run into some bachelors.
Yeah. So it's still, the house is still there, apparently?
Yes, you can look them up on Google Maps. That's what I did with Dad several years ago. So, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Doug.
Hey, Tom.
Hey Doug, thanks for
Hey,
doing the
Doug.
meeting last year or last month. That was very kind of you.
You
Appreciate it.
bet. Happy
Yeah.
to do
Did a fabulous job.
it.
Yeah,
two-
I was just reading the minutes in the VP's report. Boy, was it concise. You reported that all is well in the crazy world.
I got quoted, huh?
Yeah, I think Marilyn got you
Marilyn
that
probably
right.
liked it, so she put it down. Well, I think that's a good expression. Like it.
It makes as much sense as anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't too all is well in a crazy world. Good. Catherine said she would be 15 minutes late. She'd be here about quarter after. So we can start without her, but we still need more board members, I think, before we have enough to go. We really only have the 4 of us right now.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
I didn't hear from Dick or anything that he wasn't coming. Did anybody else?
No, I didn't. Let's see.
Here he is.
Oh, good. Wonderful. And Todd said he would be here, pretty sure.
Hi, Dick.
Hello.
Hey, Dick,
Dick,
welcome. We're just
It
getting
was
gathered
hard to find
together.
my Zoom link.
Say that again.
It was hard to find my Zoom link.
It a little bit is sometimes.
It's
Yeah,
weird.
yeah.
I searched under UUCS and couldn't find it. I finally searched under Zoom and eventually showed up.
Did
I
you get a
use
haircut, Dick? Look good.
Mhm. Mhm.
I use the UUCS Zoom links, which every time it comes in the email, I put it right in the same corner of my desktop. So I replace the other one and put in the new one.
That's a good way. Mhm.
And that worked. Otherwise, I'd have been scrambling as you were, Dick, looking for, where's that email?
Usually search the inbox.
Yeah, I just got off a different Zoom.
Oh,
Mm.
okay. Well, maybe I should text Todd real quick. Hang on, guys. See if he's still joining.
Mhm.
Could conceivably go to Lowe's sooner than 5:30 and still get to the Korean thing like.
So we have enough folks if Todd doesn't join to carry on, I assume, Tom, because there's 5 of us here now. Catherine will be here in a minute.
I would be in agreement with that.
Everybody else?
yeah.
Yeah,
Let's roll on then, shall we? We'll just skip all the stuff for Todd until he gets here, assuming he gets here. I guess the first order of business, and then Tom has already mentioned cool things that he found in the minutes that he approved of. Thank you, Marilyn. I know you're
Oh.
listening. From
Yeah.
last month, is there any amendments to that?
I see no reason for any. Excellent, concise presentation.
Yes, it is. They were really well done, Marilyn. Thank you. Anybody else? Any thoughts on the minutes, or can we approve the minutes for October?
Move to approve.
All right, let's go for that. They are approved. I went out of order a little bit. We are called to order, but I went to the minutes first. The agenda also needs to be approved. Any updates or changes to the agenda other than kind of delaying Todd's
Well-
contributions?
Maybe you've got it covered under 12A. If you, by reading the minutes from the previous meeting, we went through this conversation where Catherine was, resigned from one position, was appointed to the other, and then it stated that we were still looking for another person. And then did you have a conversation? Somebody had a conversation with Catherine after. I think we need, under that section, we need to make sure that is corrected. And not that we have to change the other minutes, but that we make sure in these minutes that there's a new game plan.
Yeah, and we have an agenda item for that, Tom, down number 12.
Yeah, and I just hope we get to number 12, because I think it should be very definitely corrected or adjusted.
Okay. Well, given that we've just knocked off items 4 and 5, we're just going to be zipping right along. So
Yeah.
We'll get it done. Did you want to try to move it up earlier in the agenda?
Well, let's just be flexible
Okay.
as we get toward a point where we think we need to lose our quorum, that we make that clarification.
You got it. Sounds good. All right. So, Lynn, thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate that, like always. And thank you also for being on the shared ministry team. Lupa and I were talking about this when we created the agenda. And she asked for a definition of the shared ministry team. So if you would be so kind as to kind of share your thoughts on what that team is for a little bit, that might be good for all of us. Okay.
Well, this team was, the history of this team was, it was used to be called the Team on Ministry. But actually, let's not go to history. Let's go new. Let's move forward in our lives.
Yeah.
So the team is set up according to our bylaws. Our responsibility is for monitoring the overall ministry of the church, and certainly the relational health of members and the ministry, basically. So kindly, this team was given quite a bit of time to sort of figure themselves out following the original shared ministry team that happened during all of our chaos time. So when that team did sort of an exit report, it was an interim team, and I was on that also with Tom Mosier, Sue Stieritz, Nancy Avery, and a couple of others who eventually left the church. So the new team came on, and it just kind of stuttered a little bit, trying to figure out how they were going to do this. So at any rate, it has been a little bit of a process. And I will say that historically, that team has been a bit of a group of people where some people go to voice their complaints or concerns. And we want to shift away from that because it's not healthy. And we want to be a healthy relations team. So I will say that there are 4 of us on that team, 3 who were on the team last year. Dick Gammon is on the team, John Beaton is on the team, Barbara Nelson is on the team, and myself. Last month, I mentioned that Anna Morrison was considering being on the team. And the last I spoke to Anna, she was still considering. However, I heard from some people who went to speak to Anna about being on the team that she was not interested. She did not want to. I have a little bit of a concern that it might have been a bit overwhelming for her. So, so we want this team to be about healthy relations, and how do people who have a concern deal with those kinds of concerns, and how can we move forward as a group of people who want to be healthy together. So we've got some ideas, and we want to definitely have a healthy Sunday for all of us. So if I can invite you all to remember why you're here, why you are contributing in the roles you're contributing in, it's the same thing for all of us, even on the shared ministry team, right? We want to come to church on Sundays because we want to be inspired, we want to see our friends, we want to create community, find meaning, and do our justice stuff. Same as you. So this team, we've just had one meeting since I've been on it, but we talked a lot about, and I hope this will give you some guidance as far as what do you want to do about your complaint system, which Tom and I recommended that we scrap from the policies and procedures thing. But people do have concerns that they sometimes want to share. So what we are going to propose, or the way we want to move forward with this team, is that those kinds of day-to-day concerns or frustrations or maybe new ideas or sometimes complaints, whatever those things are, that they are not addressed on Sunday mornings with a single shared ministry team member.
Mm-hmm.
And we are practicing as shared ministry team members, actually talking to people about if this is, I hear your concern, but here we are on Sunday morning, all of us for the same, hopefully joyful time, that we can do our Sunday thing, and then maybe perhaps get together, find a time where at least two members of the shared ministry team can be together to hear somebody's concerns, if that's what they want to do. And so we're going to practice those kinds of things. If you read through the minutes, some of the other things, Marilyn took some great notes for you last month. We do want to have things that people can come and talk to us, but we want to encourage conversation about particular topics. So our first one being, what do people in the congregation think about being members of the UUA or perhaps leaving the UUA, and carrying on those types of conversations. We have 4 topics. I won't go into all of those right now, but we want to actually encourage those kinds of conversations, not necessarily the day-to-day sorts of concerns or particular little issues that people have.
Lynn,
Yes.
can I ask you a question
Yes.
about that? So is that example of the leaving the UUA shared ministry facilitated conversation just an example, or are y'all actually planning that?
That is our first, that one is one that we do want to have conversations with people.
That's awesome. It's down in the agenda on the board
Yes.
agenda too. So
yes.
Okay.
And I think some of the conversations absolutely will overlap with what's going on with a shared ministry conversation and what's going on with, because we are all dealing with similar issues, right? And things people are talking about.
Right. Right.
Right.
And listening. Right.
So,
Hmm.
so our new policy is, if it is a concern or a complaint, particularly, some things recently have come up, things that are important to one individual, or sometimes that individual will say, it's not just me I'm speaking for other people. So we kind of want to get away from that. We want to really promote healthy relationships. That is not healthy to speak for a group of people and come to one person.
Mhm.
So we want to meet in groups when people want to share concerns. So we plan to do that. Our first conversation will be about UUA, and that one will likely last for a little while. The other thing that we've talked about doing is certainly updating our teams and groups, because the most recent copy I have is something I got in a board notebook when I first became a board member 3 years ago. So, or 4 years ago now. So that team and list of groups, it has names that are outdated, all of those kinds of things. And most people don't even know what that is or where that is. So we talked about going a bit old school and bringing back at least one of our old kiosks that used to be in the back in the Friendship Hall, where there would be announcements or just a I don't know if you all call them a kiosk, but a kind of a bulletin board. They were shaped
Mhm.
like an old door. I think they were
Mhm.
trifold or
I know those ones. I know
yeah,
what
you
you're
remember
talking
those? So
Mhm.
when I was new, I used to stare at that thing, right? I would just get my cup of coffee and read that.
Mhm.
And we have noticed, lots of people were reading the auction items on the wall at church. We're not as tech heavy and tech savvy as I mean, I think lots of people are tech savvy, but not everybody wants to go do everything on the website or go
We're
look
on here.
things up or
Yeah. Yeah.
or even go to the auction items, right? We used to sign up on auctions and
Mhm.
whatnot. So we're going to bring that back. That may take me just a little bit. I'm going to be the person in charge of that, and I will get that updated, and it will eventually have a place where people can go and say who are these teams? What are these ministries of our church? Who can I talk to if I want to join the Memorial Garden team? If I want to join whatever team, who can I go talk to?
Mhm.
Who's on the shared ministry team? So so those are some of our ideas. How's that?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Thank you, Lupa. Yes, Tom?
When you say you want to have a conversation about subject A or subject B, what does that mean? A conversation, a congregational workshop or what?
Not necessarily, no. So we aren't planning at this point to send out surveys or, but those are the kinds of conversations we do want to have on Sunday mornings. So what we're trying to get away from is an old model and bring in, these are the things that shared ministry does want to hear from you. Or if you have questions about teams or something like that, then absolutely. But
I'm still hung up on how we're going to have a conversation, what that conversation means. An informal meeting after church or between services or on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night.
no, it's gonna be, I'm gonna have a cup of coffee and talk to you or somebody else. Just informal conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, well then, let me ask a question. I'm looking at the bylaws and there's 3 sections that say the team shall. And I want to ask whether you think what you have outlined satisfies these shalls. And one is shall encourage input from congregants and share impressions, observations, concerns, recommendations with the board verbally at least spring and the fall. So is that one of the shalls that you were going to be able to accomplish?
Well, I think I'm doing that right now.
Second one is the team shall present a synthesis and summary of impressions, observations, concerns, recommendations with the members at the annual meeting. So is that that's gonna be on your agenda?
Yes, because we will actually have an opportunity, that will be very much easier now because we can say these are the topics we spoke to people about.
Okay, and then the third shall is shall keep apprised of bylaws, policy, procedures, ministerial agreement with respect to the shared ministry, which is a defined term, advising all parties when the team sees inconsistencies and the potential for conflict. So that is included in your list also?
Ask me, you want to quiz me on the bylaws? You go, bud. I'm ready.
Well, I just want to make sure that
Yes.
you know, as all of the things that you've described satisfies the shall requirements of the bylaw.
Yes, I think that bylaw is written broadly enough so that the team can decide how it wants to go about doing that. This team
Okay.
does not want to have surveys sent out.
Mhm.
We don't tend to get a lot of results from those kinds of things. So we do want to have conversations with people. We want those conversations to be about topics that are important to the congregation as a whole, not just to an individual member who has an issue or a concern or a complaint. Not that we will not hear those things, but that will be in a non-Sunday meeting with at least 2 members of the team.
So you're not envisioning something that might be called a visioning exercise with the congregation. You're not contemplating that.
I'm not saying that we wouldn't do that, but what we will likely do is bring back our individual conversations with people and do to our shared ministry team meetings. And sometimes those will be open, right? So if people want to come and talk about things in a visioning kind of way, then we would do it that way.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Lynn. Now I understand the definition is a healthy relations team.
Well, it certainly is about working towards having really healthy relations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the equivalent. Yeah. Shared ministry is the equivalent of healthy relations team.
That historically was what it was, a healthy
Mhm.
relations team. But it sort of morphed into a complaint department,
Oh,
which really
okay.
sends people, not wanting to serve on the team for one thing,
Yes,
Right.
definitely not wanting to spend their Sundays
right.
hearing that.
Yeah, the wording of the definition, the final short sentence is shared ministry is the quote life unquote of the church. So the whole kit and caboodle.
Yeah.
Lynn,
So we definitely need our teams updated. Right. So give me a little bit of time. I got to find that kiosk.
Mhm.
And then people will be able to, that is our life. That is who we are. We are our teams, how people contribute to this church, how they can contribute to this church, how they can find meaning and create their community, and how they want to do that. It's hard to know how to do that right now because a lot of those are out of date.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the
We'll fix that.
one kiosk, I don't know if that's the one you're speaking of, is behind the welcome table. And I don't know whether, nobody essentially gets back there and looks at it, because I had to move it when I washed windows on the buildings and grounds thing. So maybe that's one you're thinking of, but you
Oh.
might look at it.
Okay, good. I'll take a look for that one.
Lynn, are you sticking around the rest of the meeting? Will you be here?
Yes, because I've got policies and procedures to talk about too.
Okay, okay. Well, I thought it would be good to pick up this conversations the shared ministry team is proposing to have and what we have on our agenda for the Board of Trustees to have similar conversations and that overlap. So we can talk more about that and quiz you more about that now. We'll
Okay.
move on, catch that there if that's okay. If you're going to be around, which sounds like you are.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
it might have been a bit wordy, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Welcome, Todd and Catherine. Glad to have you. Shall we
Hello.
circle back, Todd, a little bit? And if you have any words you need to share with the board, we'd love to hear it. We always want to leave a little space for you to catch us up. So thank you.
First of all, I'm so sorry that I'm late. I've been in so many meetings the last 2 days. I just had it in my head as 4:30 instead of 4 today. So I apologize.
No worries.
I will share the opening words I had planned, if that's okay, because I think they're really pertinent to what's going on in the world today. They're the words that were spoken originally by Dr. Martin Luther King, who said, "True peace is not merely the absence of tension, it is the presence of justice. Peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we strive and arrive at that goal. We must pursue peaceful ends through peaceful means." All of this is saying that in the final analysis, peace is a reflection of our daily actions, the sum of the justice in our relationships, our attitudes towards our fellow human beings, and our honest desire to foster an environment of understanding and respect for all.
Boy, is that needed in this world. Jesus.
I know, yeah. Almost makes you cry when you hear it and think about what's going on.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Todd, very much.
You're welcome.
Good words.
Yeah, so as far as my report goes, I don't have nearly as much as I did last month. So I would just add to the list of congregations I've spoken at the past 6 months now, 5 months, I should say. It now includes the church that Penny Reed is at in Jacksonville, Florida. Although I spoke at that prior to the first service on Sunday from my office, and then I walked out to very nervous staff in the sanctuary at 9:14. And then I was also invited to speak at the church in Salem in March, which is where Reverend Richard Davis is. Some of you remember him, of course. So that's what's going on there. The Spokane Faith-Based Committee has finished its main purpose for coming together, which was making recommendations to the city on homelessness and crime, and we presented that to the organizers of this committee already. So now we're able to share that document. So I'll be having that sent out once I get a digital copy to the congregation in the near future, and hopefully be able to talk about it at some point, not in a sermon, but just at a some sort of gathering. And I'd really like to highlight the pieces of it that I think I was influential in getting in there, which I don't think would be in if I weren't part of this committee. So, and the committee really enjoyed working with one another, and we're now going to be meeting again and talking about the future. Are there other things we can do something similar to on behalf of issues that our community is facing as a faith-based organization? Can we come to consensus on ways of dealing with these things? So that's been very rewarding. And then the other thing I would say is that the NAUA is, of course, continuing to provide services, increasing number of services. The big one on everyone's mind, of course, is how are we going to supply clergy for congregations in the future. There are two problems with that. One is we don't have a system in place. We don't have a lot of clergy attracted to NAUA at this point, at least not UU ministers. And there's a shortage of UU clergy across the board. I mean, when I say shortage, I mean, about 20% of what the normal number is. So we're thinking way out of the box, and we've got two phases in mind. The first phase is going to be to reach out to liberal seminaries and theological schools, to students, and just say, hey, we're looking for people interested in liberal ministry, and here are our values, and if these are your values, let us know. So we're working on the language for that right now. I wrote a letter myself and present it to the group this morning, and they're going to tweak it some. And then we'll be putting together some sort of page for our website so that we can actually onboard those folks. And then once we feel comfortable, we would start to, let congregations know that is available, and not just congregations that are NAUA members, but UUA members and anyone else who's looking for liberal ministry to help sort of really get outside the box on clergy supply and reclaim what is really the right of the congregations, and that is to credential their own ministers, choose what credentials they require, and to really help fashion those ministers as congregations rather than as having them forced on us through a very narrow gate through the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. The second phase will be, what about ministers like myself, ministers who have some experience but have sort of outgrown their former, more traditional religious tradition and have become more open-minded and would make good UU ministers? How do we reach out to those and let them know that our doors are open to them as well? So the idea is to really, I hope, enrich our pool of ministers past both the narrow-mindedness and the narrow access that has become the tradition in the UUA, and really return to what our roots are, and that is being open to a variety of individuals and letting the congregations decide what that's going to look like for them. So we're moving forward. Hopefully in the next couple of months, we will have sent out our first communication to all of those progressive seminaries, and there's probably about 20 of them at least that we've identified that might have students that would be interested. So that's where that's at. Yeah, Tom?
Would out of the box include finding a interested reporter, New York Times, Washington Post, something that would be even outside of the typical religious framework?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I hearken it back to the Baptist tradition, which is really the same tradition Unitarianism came from, 500 years ago, of course. But we decided as part of the Edict of Torta that the churches would determine who their ministers were going to be for themselves, right? They weren't going to be handed down, and if they liked them, great. If they didn't, that's up to them too. So what we see in the Baptist or Southern Baptist tradition, which is the polity is the same as the Unitarian tradition, except there is no equivalent of a credentialing body like the MFC. And that is, one, kept the Southern Baptist Convention out of turmoil when they have bad actors in the ministry, because it ends up becoming an employment situation with the church, right? So because the church is the employer, not the MFC. The MFC and the UUA have forgotten that they do not own the ministers.
Yeah, but
they know
the MFC, so clarify that.
Ministerial Fellowship Committee. So the Ministerial Fellowship Committee is the credentialing body of ministers of the UUA. It is a UUA organization. So sometimes I use it synonymously to say the UUA. When the UUA credentials ministers, I'm meaning through the MFC. But this would give the right to the congregations again. And so you have a lot of little fellowships, for example, in the Baptist faith, just about any of you have driven through a small town in America, you probably see 2 or 3 churches right on the main strip, right? There might be nothing else there, but there's 2 or 3 different churches. None of them are Unitarian churches, because we don't do that. But what they do to survive is they might find a person from their own congregation who they think really knows the Bible, and that person they will ordain and they will call as their minister. If you go to a bigger city, they'll say, hey, you know what? We can afford to pay top dollar for somebody that has really good credentials, maybe certainly a seminary degree, maybe 10 years of experience, maybe a PhD. That's up to the congregations. The UUA, in this case, the Southern Baptist Convention has nothing to do with that. And this is something that is really a tradition that I think has been, whether it was intentional or unintentional, robbed from our autonomous congregations, which now believe, as many ministerial candidates believe, that they cannot become ordained or be recognized as a UU minister until the UUA deems them worthy of that, credentials them. That is a lie. It is an affront. It disgusts me, and it is simply not true. So as I said in my letter to the UUA asking to be removed from their roles, I made it clear I will be continuing in Unitarian Universalist ministry because I have been ordained to do so by the only body with the authority to do so, my local church. So that's what we want to. We want to re-educate ministers and congregations to realize that this is a key part of our value system, as well as our right as autonomous congregations. So, but that's down the road. Right now, we're just working on getting at least some sort of pool, so when congregations ask, we will have something to offer.
Right.
Including foreseeably this congregation at some point. I mean, that's why I'm doing this, right? I will not be around forever, and we need to have systems in place to provide liberal ministers for our congregations.
Right.
Thank you.
That's all I've got. You're welcome.
Thank you, Todd.
Oh, I think Dick has a question.
Yeah, so I have a comment on that because, well, 2 comments. I went to the UA board meeting, which happened the day before yesterday. And there was one good thing that came out of that. They actually came up with a UA statement on Gaza that was reasonably balanced. So many institutions these days go totally pro-Israel or totally pro-Palestinian, and they actually tried to have a balanced statement on that. And there's one published on UUA website, and I asked them if the board was going to have its own statement because they had a 60-minute executive session where they apparently discussed some of that, but they hadn't decided yet. But at least they're trying to, on that issue. I guess it was so controversial that they didn't want to divide up UU congregations on that issue. They tried to be balanced. But that I think is worthy. But the other thing is they discussed was the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. They approved new rules and policies for the Ministerial Fellowship Committee. And they state very explicitly that the UUA will not call anyone a minister just because they've been ordained. That they have to meet certain criteria, and they have to be in fellowship or preliminary fellowship, and they have to meet 3 different criteria under Rule 6. And so the UUA, even though a church may have a minister who came from a different religious tradition or something else like that, or didn't want to get fellowship, the UUA will refuse to acknowledge them as, or at least call them as a minister. They won't be referred to as a minister.
They are failing to recognize the right of the congregation, which is in their bylaw.
Yeah, and so that's what we should challenge them on that point, on the congregational policy. You say, well, congregation can choose its own minister, but you refuse to refer to them as a minister unless they're in fellowship, you know.
That's right. Yeah, they're a
and
UU minister because the congregation chose them, not because, and that's a serious problem. All the more reason for congregations to pull away from this draconian organization.
Right, and besides being in fellowship, in fact, this rule, it seems to say that you have to be in full fellowship. It's kind of confusing. I said, well, how could you not refer to a minister as a minister unless they're in full fellowship when they have so many people in preliminary fellowship? It's kind of muddy.
Well, let me
yeah.
say this much too, because full fellowship, it's for those who don't know, this is another one of those euphemistic phrases they passed on to us, so we don't know what the hell they mean. It used to be called final fellowship.
Right.
Okay, once you reach your third phase, your third round of sort of trial periods at your church, if you will, you would receive final fellowship. That meant you were done with the MFC. Okay, that's it. You're done. They don't have to get any more credentialing with them. They want to be able to keep their thumb on the ministers and not require them to have continuing education, continuing training, and to satisfy that they've absorbed that training to their liking. And so it is ongoing, and that is what full fellowship is. So there's really no difference between preliminary and full at that point, because full fellowship means that they're still going to be trying to control the ministers who do not work for them.
Right, and that may be one of the issues in the voting, that a lot of people think that many of the ministers feel obligated to vote the way the UA wants. Otherwise they'll be disfellowshipped or won't be listed or helped in any way when they're looking for jobs. And
they're at least 25% of the voting block in any GA.
Right, and so but another aspect, one of the criteria was to be this called a minister, was not just full fellowship, but they had to demonstrate commitment to anti-oppression work and collective liberation, both of which are undefined.
You got dogma and postmodernism. That's what collective liberation is.
And so I wrote back to the UA board saying, well, collective liberation has come to have an aura of censorship and conformity to it. And what's going on here? And this anti-oppression work has gotten so bad that many of the people doing anti-oppression work have become oppressors themselves. And my response from Charles Dumont on that point, on those 2 points right there, was I disagree with you on that.
Yeah, of course he does. Okay, to disagree.
Right. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that report. Thanks for that report.
And there was also one other point that was in there. They had said on this, accepting these new rules, that the new rules made Ministerial Fellowship Committee less of a gatekeeper. They actually explicitly said this verbally, but not in the rules itself. And when they spelled out the rules, the major changes actually were that they were making things more flexible, like for people with disabilities and odd arrangements. And I thought that was worthy to make some of these arrangements more flexible. But I said, well, I see how these rules and whatnot are becoming more flexible, but it seems to me that MFC is still a gatekeeper. And Charles Dumont on that point said that he could not address that. He was not going to address my question in that.
Wow, that's important news, man. Thank you.
So that's what we're facing.
Yeah.
And also before that, the day before that, I'd sent in an even longer report saying, well, some of this stuff is worthy, like being more flexible. I said, you're missing the elephant in the room, and that is the fairness of the Ministerial Fellowship Committee when it does their evaluations of fellowship and ministerial fellowship and everything else. I said, there's this strong record now of lack of legal due process. And I got no response at all on that.
Hmm.
We just have to breathe deep and let the UUA go. That's all I can say. That I think that we waste our time and energy and heartache on
Yeah,
that
and
organization.
another point on that is that today, Mona and I, another person in our church, Mary Painter, we had a meeting with our new minister, Allison, I think Duran Sutherland. She's from Ashland, and she's the new minister of Saltwater, and she seems like a pretty solid person. But Mary Painter asked her, well, what do you think about what happened to Todd Ekloff? And her response was, well, that was before I was on board. She graduated from Start King in 2022, but she wouldn't go beyond that. She wouldn't say like, oh, I'll investigate that or something like that. She just wanted to sort of bury that and not even address it. And I think that's the pressure they're getting right now from Boston. Because she seemed like a pretty solid person.
But at least she didn't say she hates me.
Right, yeah, but she didn't sign it or anything else like that. But you can see the pressure they were under.
Yeah. All right. I'm sure we need to get on with our agenda, but thank you for that, Dick. That's I always appreciate you going to those meetings, and what an important one for you to have attended.
Indeed. Thank you, Dick. We'll hopefully get all that stuff in the minutes, and it will be part of our conversations about UUA withdrawal, more evidence, more things that we need to make clear to the congregation from your experience, right? We'll have to bring that to everybody. So thank you for going to get that information. We hear this stuff from Todd, but it's really valuable to hear it from multiple sources. So thank you very much.
Someone they can trust.
Well, it's hard.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, it's hard.
I'm a little biased.
What's that, Todd?
I'm a little biased.
Yeah, actually, it does make a difference when I go to these board meetings, because I go very regularly. I ask very intelligent questions and ask answers. It's much harder for them to demonize me.
What is the meeting? It's a board meeting?
The UUA board meeting on Zoom. They allow visitors on UUA board meetings. In the regular meeting, you can't ask a question in the chat or anything, but they have an open house, which they had yesterday, where you can ask some questions. And then you can always email questions in before or after a board meeting, which I've been doing. And sometimes I do get responses.
We'll need all of that information. And Todd, I wasn't saying you were biased. You probably are. Every reason to be, right? But when it's part of the conversation. We want a lot of different perspectives and views. So I do appreciate that, Dick. Anybody else want to go to?
Well, I just say one thing. Whenever I've tried to actually bring up Todd's situation directly with any board member, it's like a third rail. They don't want to touch it. That's what it is.
Right. Well, even that piece of information. So. But okay, so moving along. Thank you both for that information, Todd. All that stuff about what the NAUA is doing seems to counter essentially the coup that is the clergy takeover by the MFC. All that euphemistic language. We need to have that as part of our conversation ultimately too, right? I mean,
yeah.
To explain. And listen, I guess, explain what we know and listen. So, okay, where are we on the agenda? Sorry. Oh, Doug chatted me and said he had not had time to meet with the ops team to liaise, I guess, and get information. And he's in the midst of a home visit and needed to go and be with his hosts, so he had to leave. So we're skipping item 8 on the agenda. Dick, did you have anything to share about as a treasurer? I did put you on the agenda that way. It's definitely optional. You don't need it necessarily every month, but if you have something to share, please do.
You're muted.
Dick?
Yeah, nothing to share this month.
Okay, all right, awesome. Thank you. That's perfectly fine. just kind of kept it on there. Okay, Lynn, would you like to, and Tom, give us an update on your policies and procedures? You alluded to this earlier in the meeting with something, so
Yes, great.
let's hear it.
Whether or not I was going to stay all day. Yes. Okay, guys, I sent you your homework assignment. I did not get any questions or email or responses, which actually, except for one from Luba, which I think I clarified a couple of things about the end statements. Which is good. I was hoping that we would have any questions that you might have brought forward during the meeting. And if there aren't any questions, then, or concerns or issues that you wanted to address with us, then Tom and I would like to graciously recommend that you adopt this document and call it your new blank slate, and you can pick it up and take it from there. With one caveat, that we would be able to go back one more time and put in periods and commas where he, and italices or something, where he has seen a few little typo errors in the nice clean document. But first, let's take questions, concerns, or thoughts. Okay, great. Looks like you love it.
Okay.
Well, if that said, I move that we adopt the policy and procedures 6-page document that Lynn presented as a copy with all the additions and deletions dropped from the previous policy governing document, subject to some editorial adjustments that would make it a final, a final document.
We have a second?
Second,
There we go. Thank you, Luba.
And now you discuss?
Any discussion?
Let me just say this kind of the way this is a constantly working document, a fluid document. So if this document is what we adopt, then it would be, I don't know whether it goes on the website or whatever, but it's guides the board and the rest of the operations team, and to some degree some of the congregational issues, but mostly between the operations team and the board, and it's subject to additions or changes as they may come to the board for something that needs to be done. So it's a fluid document, but it's subject to, and the result of a major revision, which hasn't taken place probably for 15 years.
And I would like to add one more thing to that. And I did say this last month, but it's something I feel incredibly strongly about, because I do believe it was part of our issue in some of our conflicts that we've gone through in this church. And that is when somebody brings you something as a board member, as you're serving on this board, any individual who brings you something, to find out what is the problem they are trying to solve. It's a really good question to ask them so that they can clarify. So you can clarify what is the problem, or maybe even help them clarify. Oftentimes they are individual problems. They're not a team problem. They're not a church problem. They are an individual's problem. And so or there's really not a problem. It's just for that person. So to ask somebody if they want something, if they want the board to address an issue, to find out what problem they are trying to solve? It's just such a great question to try to work through, I think, in your own minds, because otherwise we make rules for things that and policies for things we really don't need. And that document and our bylaws documents then gets very cluttered. And I think that is what partly became part of our problem. And then we do things or don't do things that are written down because we wrote them because somebody suggested it and everybody said, oh, that's a good idea, without asking, what problem are we solving? So I really urge you to keep that question in your minds.
And keep that question in our minds before we amend your very clean and concise 5-page document, essentially, or
Yes.
and our bylaws documents too. It was a big effort for you, Lynn and Tom. So to winnow that down and clean it up. So thank you. Yeah, I hear you. I hear the injunction.
And, just as a little example, the little details we would do, we'll end up putting the revised date on it when it would be done. What date, if it's adopted today, we would do that. And then page numbering, actually there are 6 pages and not 5. So, those are the little things that we would be tweaking out, but we can go with the overall approval. And I hope that when the motion is voted on, I certainly recommend it be approved.
Can we vote? Shall we vote now?
Wait, I just want to say something. I really appreciate the tremendous, long, sustained, and thoughtful work that you guys have done on this, Lynn and Tom. Thank you so much. I know how meaningful and and difficult this process can be for you to be going through all on your own, and then you give us something beautiful. So I thank you a lot.
Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, shall we vote? Team?
Yep.
Everybody okay with voting with Zoom? You want to raise your hand? If in favor, how about that? That's really easy. Dick?
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
Catherine?
I'm trying to raise my hand.
Okay, there we go. There we go. Oh, good. Okay, motion approved. Here we go. Thank you, Lynn and Tom, very much for our new policies and procedures. All that effort. I hope we do get them published. I don't know, like on our web portal, like where we have all the rest of our documents. Once you get your periods and italicization, cleaned up.
Yeah, we'll work on it. Our next weekly meeting, Lynn?
Okay. Awesome.
It never ends.
Okay, next up on the agenda, let's see, it's a little bit after 5. We got about 30 minutes. This is a carryover from last month where I put the rumblings of UUA withdrawal. I put that on the agenda last month. I think it got moved to this month because I wasn't there and we had plenty of other things to talk about. We have actually talked about that already in the context of this call. I guess what we need to do, we've heard from Lynn about how the shared ministry team are planning on having conversations with the congregation, and this being a primary topic. And we've heard from both Dick and Todd about things we can use to share as the whys and wherefores. One of the things when we've talked about, and those are all good things, and we need to make some sort of plan for these conversations, I guess, as a board of trustees, not as the shared ministry team. Perhaps they will overlap. And which is why I was interested, Lynn, when you stick around, how Tom asked this question too, I think. How exactly were those conversations? Did you think they might be held or organized, I guess? Will they be,
Are you asking me that now? Or
I'm asking you for shared ministry, and I guess we'll need to make a plan for the board. Thinking about
the shared ministry team did not talk about doing that as an entire congregation conversation.
No. Okay.
We talked about having individual conversations. like very
Okay.
informal over coffee. Right. And
Mhm.
particularly seeking out, there are a few people that we do know who really would like to remain members of the UUA. We don't know why. But we
Right.
can be a little bit more intentional about finding out some of those things. Some people have no idea that we're even having this conversation. They don't know what we're talking about.
Well, well, that's my question to shared ministry team, I guess, and because the plan is sort of formulating. Maybe these informal conversations should happen before we as a board have something more formal and present information that we've learned, like we just got from Todd and Dick, and perhaps what you learned in your conversation. And it's much more the board's conversation, much more formal and um, very intentionally inclusive and marketed or advertised as a conversation. I don't know, Tom, if that means it will necessarily be a congregational meeting. You know, we'll have to, since we're not really, at least not in the conversation stage, making a motion to remove ourselves from the UUA. We're just starting a conversation, but we want to have it with the board. So I don't know. Do
I think
y'all have a time frame for that, Lynn? I'm sorry. Do you have?
Well, I was just going to say, I think, the shared ministry team could bring forward just a very informal summary of the conversations we've had and give that as another report. It says we have to report to you or we're supposed to report to you in spring and fall, but I see no reason we couldn't report monthly on these are the conversations we're having. This month happens to be about UUA stuff. We'll bring that forward to you.
Wow, that would be great. I was thinking, guys, we also needed to, in addition to these, how horrible the UUA is, the coup kind of stuff and ministry and all the things we were aware of, we also need to understand what it means at a very detailed level to our staff, I guess, or the running of our church if we're no longer members of the UUA. Is there anything? And make sure we've done our due diligence to understand. I don't know what they are. I always bring this stuff up, insurance or websites or web hosting, whatever they're doing for us with us. And I'm not saying I'm asking for an answer right now. It just seems like something we need to research and prepare and present as that conversation as well.
Just as an interesting item, Richard Gammon, one of your team members, came to the men's UU breakfast, and he came with and asked us. We spent about a half an hour. There were 8 or 9 people there, trying to give pros and cons about what we saw. And one of the big questions that kind of stymied us from having full, absolute, complete answers by each individual was we don't know what the consequences are to the church. No one in the group was qualified to identify what the consequences would be. So that's part of what I guess needs to be brought to us. The other item was pointed out that in the 2024 General Assembly, there's going to be a vote on the amendment, which would change a lot of things. Well, if that amendment fails, then where are we? And that might influence how people decide or what they decide. It's probably unlikely it's going to fail, but nonetheless, that question came up. So that's the kind of conversation that maybe you're talking about, Lynn, as an example. And that was with 6 or 7 people, and we spent about a half an hour around a big round table talking.
Yeah. So what this initial conversation we have will do, I think, is pull a lot of that together. What are the pros and cons? What are the reasons for leaving? What are the reasons for staying? And those will be based on exactly those kind of conversations, which I'm sure is part of why Dick was engaging in it, because he knows we're going to have this conversation, and that's the kind of information we're looking for, right? So this isn't going to be based on the ideas in the heads of the 4 or 5 people that have the conversation. It's going to be based on what we've heard in our conversations. So we want to put everything down, right? We want to put every idea, every concern we've heard down is part of the reasons that we're hearing. And that way we can then evaluate the value of the reasoning, right? That's going on. So I think that those are exactly the kind of comments we're looking for. And those things should end up in this, basically it becomes a very, very valuable document, because instead of the hearsay and the sort of, oh, I heard this or somebody said this, we get it all down. Here's what people are saying. And probably most people have thought one of those things or more, right? So we know the questions that people are going to ask. We know the answers we have to try to find, all that stuff.
Yeah. At some point, it seems, as speaking as a board member, that whether or not the board takes a position, one, we're going to have to be educated. Facts is going to be useful. And then at some point, despite or regardless of what the board might feel about it, we're 7 people when we have a congregation with probably 210 or 20 voting members. That group is going to have to be engaged, whether it's in a formal congregational meeting, which is, it would have to be a special meeting because we couldn't just slide it in for 12 minutes on a regular annual meeting, or it's just going to be an informal conversation after church or someday on a special day that we designate, in which there won't be any action taken, but it'd be for the purpose of informing people. So that, I hope that comes out of the shared ministry team, is how to accomplish education of the congregation on what the issues are and what the facts are, as well as the board being educated.
Yeah, I wasn't going to give that to the shared ministry. Maybe it could be a joint effort in a way. And I thought of something similar to what we did when we worked on the bylaws for a year, and then had several meetings throughout the spring to share the details, because it was too much to do at once. And this is, in a way, the same thing, where we need to have multiple opportunities to first collect all this stuff. And Todd and I, like, 100% agree we need to write it down, because we have been talking about it for a long time. So we need it written down so that we can all see it and all get, clear with the facts and the pluses and the minuses. And it's real simple. I think it's really simple. Just like you said, reasons for leaving, reasons for staying. That's it. Just 2 piles. And we got to collect them all and start collecting them. And then we use that as the means to socialize this. Like Lynn, I think, gave the thumbs up for that bylaw thing that we did a couple years ago. Advertise a couple of meetings. I don't know, Luba, if you came to any of those or remember hearing about them before we revised the bylaws wholesale. So we did our best to communicate them, and we probably have a few lessons learned about how to do such an effort, get it out to everybody and get them involved. But that's kind of what I'm thinking we probably ought to do. So maybe jointly with shared ministry can keep talking in that super formal, informal, individual kind of way, and bring us in your offer to bring us what you find. Sounds kind of snoopy, but good, actually.
Yes.
Good reporting.
Yes, and I agree with you totally, Betsy, that I think it's a really good idea to have multiple opportunities for people to engage with board members, particularly. Certainly shared ministry will gather comments, right? We aren't planning on educating people. We're planning on gathering their thoughts and sharing those thoughts with you. Right. So you know what people are saying and what they're talking about and what you need to educate people on.
Right.
And giving them multiple opportunities to hear or learn about the issue. Because a one-time shot is just, that's what's kind of tough about having even just one congregational meeting about it to educate it. People they won't come, they forget, or they are traveling, or a myriad of reasons they can't. But multiple opportunities to engage is a good idea.
I absolutely agree, because the last thing that we would want is to have people feel like it was sprung on them, that they really didn't realize how important it was until, until the very last second. I like, conversations that are advertised and scheduled, and come and talk and ask questions with the board. I like that very much.
You may want multiple formats too, where people can submit questions or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as far as education, Lynn, I was thinking the first question I would ask as a shared minister, for example, is what do you know about UAA?
Yeah.
This is a tough question to answer. I asked myself. And if it were not for Dick, I wouldn't know certain facts.
Just so all of us keep in sight of how this would have to happen, Section 5 of Article 1 says that initiation or withdrawal of UUCS membership in the Unitarian Universalist Association or any other organization shall be determined by at least a 2/3 majority vote of members in attendance at a duly convened congregational meeting. So sooner or later, regardless of only 20% of the people attend any workshops or bother to talk to a board member, this is going to end up in a congregational meeting, which we need a quorum, and then we need to have 2/3 majority of members in attendance, blah, blah, blah. So ultimately, we're going to end up with that very contentious, possibly contentious, and maybe nasty meeting. Who knows? And it could result in a splitting of the church, depending on how things are. So it is no small matter.
That's true. Yeah. The other thing I would say, as far as the education piece goes, which yes, the shared ministry team is not seeing itself as educating the congregation, but these reports are not just for the board, right? We intend these reports to go to the congregation, that everybody will see these, and it will get them thinking, and may even become fuel for additional conversations. There may be people say, oh, well, you didn't think about this, or you didn't put this in there, or whatever. So it helps us flesh it out, but also gets people seeing the various ideas, like getting out of our own boxes. Well, here's what I think it needs to happen, and they don't see any other perspectives, and suddenly you see a bunch of perspectives from your fellow church members. It adds to the richness of the conversation and help also soften some of the edges that some people might have. So we want to get this stuff out through the Sun and maybe some other means, so that the congregation has access to it as well.
So are you gonna, Lynn, before you have a conversation with folks, tell them that your remarks are duly noted and gonna be published in the Sun? That's what you just said, right?
Because we won't be citing them, but just for example, in this conversation tonight, you see, so
Right.
the idea is that shared ministry is made up of people from the congregation who are in relationship with people from the congregation. So
Yeah.
we're hearing these things, and we come together and we say, what are some of the things you heard? Right. So we've heard things here tonight. That's part of what we're hearing in the congregation is comments people on the board have made. Things that Tom said that he's heard. We've heard that, right? So that those things can end up in the conversation. So we wouldn't say Tom Mosier said, but we hear this is one of the issues. What are the impacts on the church? What are the impacts on the staff?
How do we get that information? Document that in our reasons for leaving or reasons for staying. Todd, you got any recommendations for that? That logistical stuff, that consequences to the church, I think is how Tom framed
from leaving the UUA, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's something that probably Rebecca and I would at least need to be in on, and sit down and start talking about what formal relationships we have with them. For example, we have I think at this point there are only two of us drawing from utilizing any of the benefits of the UUA, which are not really the UUA. The UUA contracts those out. It was TIAA, and then a few months ago they scared us all by switching to another lesser known
Empower.
Empower.
Yeah.
Empower.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it would certainly mean we would, I don't know if it means we get to just stay on as former members of UUA, or if it means they would kick us out of that plan and we have to go find a plan of our own. but it would probably impact us in that way. I mean, I don't put a lot of retirement into UUA. I never have. I've put it into my own thing. So, but I don't know about Rebecca. But right now, I think that's probably it there. The other thing that might be a reality, and we don't have to go into this too much tonight, they might try to do to us what they did to the little congregation in Austin and send us a threatening letter saying, now that you're not part of the UUA, you can no longer use the Unitarianism or Universalism or a chalice or the seven principles or any of that stuff. At which time we tell them to please, roll it up and smoke it.
Fight me.
But
That's what we say.
yeah.
Take a
They may
fire.
very well tell me that. I wouldn't put it past them to resort to legal threats and maybe even try to sue us. I would imagine it would be unfounded. We've been around a lot longer than the UUA, and we were Unitarians a lot longer than UUA. All we did was join an association. We didn't join a religion, right?
A service organization.
Those are the answers that, would just changing a name to the First Unitarian Society of Spokane. Would that satisfy? Would we have to take that chalice out of the front of the church? We could use the seven principles in our own bylaws. We could adopt them into our own bylaws if we wanted to, probably. And I don't know if they abandon the seven principles, what claim would they have,
Yeah, and those principles, I find it hard to imagine they could copyright those principles. That's maybe they could, but the inherent worth and dignity of every person has been around since the Renaissance. That's not a UUA principle.
You can't copyright a chalice either.
Yeah, I heard a quote from the UUA that they would allow any church to retain the seven principles for themselves. A Trinity church could, write up the seven principles, make a plaque of it, and keep that for their own principles.
You say yes or no?
That's what the UUA said. That would be okay from their point of view.
It's
But
just
that's
so
not what
hilarious.
that's not what they said to the church in Austin, and I just read the letter yesterday.
Yeah, but I know the question is, if you just drop the Universalists and said First Unitarian Church of Spokane, would that be okay or not? Again, you might have to consult some lawyers, copyright lawyers on that.
Well, and the First Church of Spokane was something like the First Unitarian Society of Spokane. I mean,
Right.
that's a name that was, when they first founded, it would be hard for them to say we couldn't use that.
It's hundreds of years old. It's hundreds of years old. They cannot claim or universalism. These are terms that belong to everybody. They just name themselves them because of the meaning of those terms.
Yeah, I think you could challenge them in court if they tried to do that and succeed.
So I did want to say, go ahead, Betsy. I'm sorry.
Well, what I'm hearing, I guess, to conclude this conversation, at least for today, is that this is a pretty big project that we're talking about probably for this church year. Because it's what I'm thinking, again, just thinking out loud, is that in order to excite participation in these conversations, that we should put a target decision date out there for exactly what we're doing, very succinct. We're thinking about whether to leave or whether to stay in UUA, and we're going to make a congregational decision according to our bylaws at the next congregational meeting, which is our annual meeting. And then here's the conversations that we're shared team, ministry team are out listening at this level. The Sun is publishing what we're hearing there on a regular basis, and the Board of Trustees is setting up a series of conversations, and we'll figure out how to do that. And Marilyn had a great point about lots of ways to solicit that input. But I guess what we need to decide is this something that we want to take on? Yes, it sounds like a board task, a pretty big project, kind of like when we bid off bylaws and that kind of. We'd have to meet more than we are on a monthly basis. We're going to have to get a little sub team and make that document and make a plan and work.
Yeah. Some congregation will be the first congregation to leave the UUA over this. some congregation will make history, being the first congregation to say, this, you do not represent us. So I would be proud for it to be our congregation.
Me too.
Not pushing, but I'm just saying that somebody's going to do that. And what better church than the 1887 Church of Spokane, right?
And I think, after they do these bylaw revisions would be the best time if like the church determines that the bylaw revisions are counter to what we believe in or not something we want to follow.
The problem is the GA and our next meeting takes place before the GA. So you could decide, do we want to have a special congregational meeting just over this issue based on the outcome of the vote? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they've gotten rid of human dignity in their behavior.
Right.
They're promoting collective liberation, which is just a euphemism for groupthink. And so, I mean, I don't care where the principles are kept. If they're not abiding by them, that means they're not abiding by them. But I'm sorry, I'm getting into arguments. I need to report one more thing.
Okay.
I'm thinking about it because I don't know if it'll have any repercussions or not. I hadn't really imagined it would, but it may. As I think probably everyone knows, a journalist came to our church a few months ago and interviewed some of our congregation and myself about what was going on in the UUA. A journalist from the UK who works with Financial Times. As a columnist for Financial Times. That article has been awaiting her attention due to some other projects she had to get done. I have reason to believe, based on communications I've had with her this week, that it is forthcoming, perhaps within the next couple of weeks. And the only reason I say that is I understand her deadline is Monday. And this is she has said going to be a Saturday front page story on the Saturday paper. So it could be as early as a week and a half, or sometime shortly thereafter. But I don't know if that means that all of a sudden we'll start getting phone calls from other places interested or whatever. But I thought you should know. I don't know how to be prepared because I don't know what to be prepared for. Maybe nothing is probably most likely, but just wanted you to know.
Okay.
Well, I have a question, Todd. Is there anything I could write to this person? I've actually got her name already from David Cycleback that you think might be useful or helpful in any way, or should I just wait till something comes up?
I'd leave it. She has talked to so many people, some pretty big wigs in the organization, including Cycleback.
Right.
So
maybe because last week I asked him just the question you just answered. When was it coming out? You see?
Well, yeah, I don't think I would recommend reaching out to her. She's given the people she's talked to, I think she has plenty of thought. I don't know how she's going to narrow it down even to a large story, but anyway, we'll see.
We need to be a little bit careful under, here I am always getting out these bylaws. We have a Article 9, public relations. No staff, minister, team, group member, friend, or trustee of the church may represent UUCS or UUA, issue written statements or make media releases in the name of or containing the name UUCS or UUA unless approved by the board. Are we in trouble on that bylaw? If she publishes?
No, I'm not representing the church. I'm representing myself as far, but clearly she will quote me as the minister. I understand that is part of it. Otherwise, I'm forbidden to speak to anybody.
Yeah,
right?
And my question too would be as an individual, not as a board member. Would any kind of input be advised? But my feeling on this is that when it comes out, it might lead to something. Of course, this problem is this Financial Times is most people don't read that. It might be ignored, but it might generate other things that people might read. There might be secondary articles that'll be picked up by the news services or other people like that, or we'll just have to see on that. In which case, that would be a real opportunity, because at least will know there's a controversy. And a lot of people still don't.
I always interpreted that bylaw, Tom, as a board member cannot go to the media and say, UUCS thinks this.
Mhm.
But if the media comes to us and says, I want to interview these people about this experience that you had as individuals, what happened here?
We don't, no matter what there's almost no point in having this discussion because we can't control what she's gonna write, and what she's gonna write may come back and bite our ass.
But often
No.
good reporters and major media like that are clear that when they report that they're quoting someone as an individual, not as a representative of their institution. And hopefully that will happen this time with Todd too.
I hope.
Well, I mean, if that's what how the bylaws to be interpreted is a violation of my contract. So, so there's in my contract supersedes the bylaws as far as that goes. But I think the question is, there were individual members who were interviewed as members of this congregation, but they were not representing the viewpoint of the congregation. They're representing their viewpoints.
Yep.
I don't feel worried about that at all. Is that realistic to not be worried about it?
I can't.
No, I don't. No, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about it because
Okay.
I know where this
There's
report is
nothing-
coming from. I think the report is going to be fair.
Yeah, there's nothing we can do about it. It's over and done.
Pretty much.
Yeah, again, I think it'll be very helpful because so many UUs just don't get any information at all from the UA, and this will be news to them.
Were you gonna make an agenda related comment?
Well, just that we need to move on. I would like to postpone item 11 until the next board meeting. And we have that little bit of business to deal with about clarifying that.
Let's do that and then quickly set our dates. Can everybody stay another say 10 minutes tops to complete what we got to do?
Yes.
My wife has it scheduled to go out to dinner in about 5 minutes. So.
5 minutes. Okay, let's do it. So, okay. Lube, are you okay for another 5 minutes?
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Tom, good.
Oh yeah.
All right, thank you. So what Tom is alluding to, we're going to skip item 11 on the agenda. We're going down to 12. Recognize the Board of Trustees has a full slate. And so Tom has very painstakingly, with help from Dick Steele, I think, created the table and described which positions we have all of the board members that are members of the board right now, which positions they're filling, and how long their terms are. And Catherine we did a little switcheroo in order to try to honor Catherine's request to be released from the board. So Catherine's serving out a year's term. I can't remember whose it is. And Luba's got 2 years, essentially, and we have a full slate of board members. And that's essentially what I wanted to say in the board meeting and get it in the minutes, have it kind of acknowledged by the team. There's really no motion or anything to do. It's just that we wanted it, and Tom wanted to make sure that got into the minutes.
Yeah.
Anything else to add there, Tom?
Well, just because you weren't at the beginning there, Catherine, the minutes of the last meeting said that you were switched to that other position, but that we were going to look for a replacement as soon as possible. And then based on what you've said, then we're not going to be looking anymore. And that's, I think, what Marilyn needs to have by way of clarification. You don't need to change the previous minutes. You just need to note that you're gonna fill out this term, and there will be elections both for Luba and the vacant position that Catherine will come to the end of a 3-year term, at the next annual meeting.
Yes, yes, that sounds good.
Great. Thank you, Catherine. Okay,
And
real quick.
with,
ahead,
and with number 11, let's continue that to the next meeting and have it as an item on the next meeting.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, let's see, and the last little bit is just, setting our next board meeting for December and the next, executive committee meeting and getting a volunteer. Luba, thank you for, and Tom joining me last week to put the agenda together for this month's meeting. So first, let's tackle the date. It's supposed to be, I think, probably like on Christmas Day or something.
It is December 27th.
December 27th. So do you guys want to move it up a week? I'd say keep it on the 27th personally. How about everybody else though? What are your schedules?
I'd be inclined to skip it if it was the 27th.
Okay, skipping is an option. We have 10 meetings we need to hold in a year, and we're potentially going to take on a project that's going to take some of our energy. So we've already not had a meeting in August, is that right?
Yes.
We
right.
could take December off. That is an option. We can take December off. Any thoughts?
I'm not thinking there's anything really pressing. The possible working with an amendment that I had put forth that can be delayed, until January.
Okay.
There isn't anything real pressing about it.
It gives us all more time to have those conversations too.
That's what I'm thinking, and maybe contemplate this project where this move, and okay.
Well, I
Okay.
move that we not have a December meeting or an exec committee meeting.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay. All in favor? Yay.
Yeah.
Catherine, raising her hand, right?
But do we need to set the January meeting then?
Yeah, we can do that.
That'd be January 24th is the fourth Wednesday. It has 5 Wednesdays in it, but that would be the fourth Wednesday, would be January 24th.
Let's do it unless there's any problem. Let's set 24th for the meeting and the 17th for the executive committee.
Sounds good.
Who
And
would like to join me on executive committee to make the agenda? Need a volunteer. Doug will be there. He's VP, so we kind of rope him in every month.
I will. I'll be
Okay.
there.
Catherine, awesome. Thank you.
And along with Todd.
And Todd, of course. Always invited. Always welcome. All right. Anything else before we gavel or closed tonight? Get Dick off to his dinner date.
Happy holidays to everybody upcoming. Sounds like
meeting.
both Thanksgiving and Christmas. I'm sure we'll see each other before.
Enjoy.
I think we will. But yes, happy holidays to everybody. Thanks, Catherine.
Holidays.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Good night,
Bye.
guys.
Good night, everyone.
Bye. Good night.
Good night.